Thing is that people stayed. You're not getting everyone out. I mean, I know some of the people that shouldn't have stayed, civilians, that you should just get out when it's that big. Your heart drops. You find out people are in somewhere and you know it's dangerous. But yeah, you knew that was going to turn bad because not everyone got out.
Emergency warnings are in place on Kangaroo Island with concerns about 2 towns under threat. The situation still...
Like the bottom of flames and it's just burning across the trees and you cannot breathe, you just go...
Place called Ravine. There was an emergency warning for that fire earlier on today.
The entire island is now under bushfire threat.
Pretty much the worst day of your life, really, looking at a tsunami of fire coming straight at you.
The moment when I felt really scared was when we were trapped down at the beach.
My concern is that Vivon Bay will be impacted in roughly about 20 minutes.
And that's when we stayed the night here with tea towels as blankets and all that.
Yeah, when she rolled through, yeah, she's on for young and old.
It's a pretty traumatic experience. Never really want to go through it again.
So this is the house, the four-wheeler that I got back here before I went looking for somewhere to shelter. That didn't fare so well. But it wouldn't sell for much at the moment, would it? Well, the worst moment, I suppose, was trying to locate Jo, know where she'd gone. The kids had rung me, so they knew I couldn't find her. Yeah, I guess that was as bad. I was pretty nervous that I was never going to get back to the house, and if I'd been another 10 minutes later, that would have been a real issue. But I had no idea where Jo was, and I was aiming to get back to try and do something to her. So we just physically didn't have any time to do anything. I mean, I knew from a bit after 7 we were goners. I reckon by 8:30 we were in real trouble. The fire was on the farm. So, you know, you just can't prepare with that amount of time. It was horrendous. Never seen anything like it in my life. And I've spent my life as a CFS member, deputy group officer for many years, and I fought many fires. I don't think I've ever lost a house in any fire I was running, and yet this one came through and took out 60 odd houses or whatever. It's just right off the scale. Yeah, of course I can remember what it looked like, yeah. Yeah, well, Jo did a bit of that while I was out moving sheep, so we got out with the computer. I think she actually got passports. She forgot to get my wallet, so I didn't have any licences left. Yeah, she got some stuff out. She was pretty sensible, actually. Got a blanket wet to cover herself in, but she didn't have long either. It came through here, I came in from the other side. The Rams, unfortunately, were here around the tennis court, and that's where I was trying to get back in time to get them out, but just run out of time. If I'd gone out with them, I probably wouldn't have got out myself. So, yep. I had to leave them where they were. Not one of them survived. They wouldn't have had a hope out there. You're a good old fella. Didn't know if you have to be put down, but hopefully, another 3 or 4 days you'll be back to normal. Hey, you good old dog. The thing that was pretty sobering, I woke up the next morning after a couple of hours sleep, and I had a pair of dirty work clothes on, and that was about all I owned. That is really quite a sobering thought. I'm living in other people's clothes most of the time. It just seems staggering how much you haven't got when you get in a situation like this. Yeah, 3rd of January was a pretty interesting day, obviously. It was our wedding anniversary, in fact, 51st. The day began with patrolling hotspots from the fire that had been affecting us since the 20th of December. And in fact, during that day, just after lunch, we were nearly burned out from the north with a fire running up our creek. We tried to back burn. Got home at 6 o'clock in the afternoon thinking we'd been saved, but the fire was raging down through Flinders Chase heading south, and I knew we would be impacted at some point, but I thought 2 or 3 days. So that was up until about 7 o'clock. I got a message from a friend who was advising me then that 10 minutes it would be on Rick Morris's place. So at that point we hit the panic buttons and filled up gutters. Then I headed off on a 4-wheeler to try and move sheep out the path of the fire. I reckon when I left, I had about maybe 15, 20 metres of visibility, and by the time I got back after moving one mob, I had about 2 to 3. I really struggled to find my way back to the house. By the time I'd achieved that, there were spot fires starting around me. I dumped the 4-wheeler, got a couple of dogs in the front. One wouldn't jump in the front, he was on the back. My wife was just leaving with a vehicle to go to the local airstrip where they fight fires from, because I figured that was a safe spot. And we headed off for that. There was a confusion getting there because we couldn't see the road. We just kept running off one side or the other. And the last I saw of Jo was she'd panicked and didn't want to drive through the roadside Vegelite, and I saw her backing back. By then, things were getting pretty hot, and I had to park up and find the coolest spot I could, and eventually the ute was well alight, and I bailed out of that and went looking for Jo.
So this was we had a guest room down the bottom of the house here. Was the ensuite. Got the kids' bikes here. Yeah, that's probably one of the hardest things, and I think for the kids was as well. They just got new bikes, and so then to see them like that, yeah, that's pretty hard. Probably having a house is what you miss the most. Being able to sit on your couch at night and, watch the cricket, watch football, like all the, just the little things that you don't even think about. Walking into the kitchen and grabbing something out the fridge. Both the kids' chairs, that's all you can really see left of their stuff. So that was a Christmas present, daughter's Christmas present. So she'd barely used it. So it'd been, it's one of those things she didn't even get a chance to use her Christmas present, and it's gone. We were in this room when the fire went through. You go to the bathroom if it gets fucking... No, you don't go into a room you can't get out of. You go down the back. Stay away from the glass, mate. We're in a full glass room, basically, so it was like being inside a tornado that was on fire. Alright, it's just the screen.
Pump still going? Yeah. It's a tough bloody pump, I'll give it that. Oh, wow. Yeah, I was just looking on that side. Fucking. What's that? Don't worry about it. Can't see a fucking thing. I think you need a new cubby house, Ben. Yeah. More than that, you need a whole mob of sheep. Oh, fuck. Yeah, we'll just fucking. Shutting the door behind you. Yeah, good plan. Come on, you smoky bastard. No, grab it again. Yeah, down front. Keep going. Can you squirt the pump? Back in!
Yeah, because I'd already lost my ute, my brother had lost his ute, both with the firefighters on the back, so then we were down to just my dad's ute with the firefighter, and that had run out of water. We'd sort of extinguished our firefighting capabilities at that stage, so we sort of had to abandon ship, so to speak, on the house. Grabbed a few things we could and then left. I mean, I grew up here, spent the last 10 years making it my place and, you know, a family home, and then, yeah, to walk away from that. It's pretty hard. So, yeah, I mean, it's still hard. There's a lot of hours of work, it's a lot of time, a lot of money, back to zero. So, there was nearly a dream here. It's mostly been wiped out now.
Like, this is the thing that amazes me. See that? The windows have run down. If you go in there and have a look, the actual shit house has exploded. Oh, this is worth millions of dollars. I didn't realise garlic burnt so well. There's 12 boxes of garlic there.
Roasted garlic.
Yeah. Fucking completely rooted. Potatoes to plant. Fucked. How many tons do you want? Fuck. It is just so bloody wrong. It is so wrong. Like, we used to hold 750 tons of spuds here. Like, there's 5 of us on Kangaroo Island, and we do 25% of Australia's seed. There was over 100, or probably closer to $200,000 worth of tools and shit in there. This is a Makita drill. Each one of these here is worth about 150. Oh shit, 150 bucks each. Roomy. I've lost my shed, probably $1.5 million worth of machines, my house and all the sheds, Mum's house, all the sheds. The house has exploded. Yeah, somewhere in here is their wedding rings.
He's the nature age. Fucking what a load. Look at that shit. That's just fuck. This is what home looks like, man.
Yeah. You know, the thing I'm really pissed off about is that we lost all the history of our family. Like, it's just, you've got all the photos and all the stuff for the kids and nothing left, mate. Not a cracker. Do you start up again or not? Do you start up again? That is a bloody good question.
Just so I can touch base and see where they're at. So we've got Hub further down where we're collecting lots of non-perishable food items, and then we've got plenty of water to be able to hand out. Today is an exceptionally hot day, and so we've been handing out ample amounts of water, and everyone's been loving it. In through the back room here, this is where we have all of our tools. So we've got a lot of hand tools, electrical equipment, and things to be able to equip people with to be able to get back onto their properties and start doing things. All through here we've got lots of bedding and sleeping bags and things like that. So we've had plenty of people come in. At the moment we've got dozens of locals out there in camper vans, caravans, people's sheds and things like that. So they're just living with the bare necessities, and whatever we can equip them with has just been fantastic. As a club, we purchased a washing machine and a chest freezer. So we're now calling this back room the laundry. We've got our chest freezer full of bread and frozen meat to be able to send off to the community as well. We've got people coming in with escues that we've provided them with, and little butane burners or barbecues where they can go home and have a bit of a feed. It's good. A lot of our donations come in from a place called Island Care in Kingscote, where they're receiving donations statewide. We've almost been a little bit overwhelmed with all of these supplies, but these will definitely be sent out in care packages as we make visits out to residents. We'd been out on the front all day. The day the fire swept through Pandana was a really, really big day for us, and to kind of go home and see the devastation that the island was under after that day, and to see it firsthand, so severe, we just thought we had to do something and support the community as much as we could. So we put together the caravan and make sure it was good to go, and decided we could use that as an office to be able to start collecting paperwork. This is not an official emergency hub, it's just something that the community has put together as a local initiative, and the amount of people we've helped, like we're seeing a constant stream of people throughout the day, and then around dinner time we'll see people for a meal at night. These people aren't just coming in for a visit, they're coming in to pick up essential supplies. And I've seen people walk in that I know have lost absolutely everything and go, oh no, I only need like a shovel and I'll stay for dinner and I'll be right. Head off, get a few jobs done and then come back again. And I think just knowing this is here for them has been amazing. But to see people come in so torn and so proud is really quite heart-wrenching, to know that they have to, you know, reach that point themselves to ask for help, which is a really hard thing to do. We've got a few guys that have been staying here actually at the emergency hub who have lost everything and have loaded up their own vehicles to go out and visit their mates and take them supplies, take them a few bags of feed and some food and clothes, and just check up on them and see how they're doing.
So I've got myself and my 3 boys and my partner living in here. And basic is basic. You don't need much to live. We are being supplied with water, food, and all we need to do is make sure that all of our other friends have got shelter, water, and food. And that's all I'm focused on. Yeah, I've done things that I wouldn't normally do. I've pushed myself further than I normally would. And coming here was a place to feel safe, number one, and have friends around. And you read on the sheets on the walls, there's a lot of comfort in community, so you need to talk to people, especially if you're not sleeping so well and you're waking up with night sweats and terrors that wake you.
Happening to you?
Yeah, all the guys I talked to had about probably three different nights of just sheer hell on earth is what you've been through, so you recount it in your head and you wake up to it.
Yeah, that day just turned nasty, and it was more about not fighting the fire but looking after people first, and then property, houses. And yeah, like I said, that's just all a blur running around, and like I said, we're a small crew out here, so we're all stretched, and then just work into the night. A few hours sleep and get into it the next day. We don't really leave the fire ground until the job's done.
We've just had a triple line call. Are you up Stokes Bay area at all?
There you go. But you hear that, and all your friends live down there. So that's the bit about this fire, is we know everybody. That's why I've been here every day, because these guys, when the flames pass their farm, they have to go back, they look at fences, look at their livestock. So they're still doing this and working the farm, whereas I just live here, so I can come here, I open up, cook breakfast, and I just have to worry about how I'm paying my rent. That's all I need to do.
You're going to get hit with the front, drop your side turn, just leave the front open. Just keep following us. All good, just keep following us. Drop your curtains on the side so only the driver's front is open. Over. You've got 200 metres to go, over.
Some of these guys have done up to 20 hours, probably 19, 20 hours straight. And if you're doing something and it's being productive, you don't just stop and go home. Your adrenaline's running, so you can't sleep anyway. So even at the end of those shifts, we'd sit down and have a beer and talk about it. And that's when, I live across the street and I've slept on the floor here. You just collapse in a heap and get up and go to work. You might get 2 hours if you're lucky, broken sleep. And so really, we've been doing this for a month, flat out. It's not until this is all over you're going to go, wow, now what do we do? because we're still in it. My mate lives down here. We just sat on the same track protecting his house after I think we did a 17-hour day and then 19-hour day and then about at 4 in the morning, got up at 6 and then did 17 hours. And I was sitting in his toilet and I could see smoke coming out of the walls and off the floor, and I went out and I said I need a day off. And that was a week and a half into all of this. Yeah. Like when you ask, how's it going? You go, fucking hell, it's blur. It's white, it's blur. Because you're not going to go to sleep when your mate's house is under fire.
It was the sheer intensity of the fire and the fact that it happened. People couldn't be in front of it trying to do something with it. Like normally a fire comes through and there'd be a bunch of farmers there with their small units and they'd make sure sheep are out the road. Generally we can pull fires up. You know, if it had been daylight and planes could have been flying, houses wouldn't have been lost. I've heard it said that it was blowing 140 k's. Now I've been out in some pretty strong winds, obviously living on Kangaroo Island, and you might curse them and lose your hat, but you can stand up. That night I was struggling to stand up in some of it. Basically went from the south coast to the north coast in maybe 2 hours. And if you're trying to save anything in front of that, then you're kidding yourself. In hindsight, there was nothing I could have done. The ute was the safest spot in the corner until it caught alight.
Once a park catches fire, it's very hard to stop, especially if you have high fuel loads like we have in this area here. You've got a weather event with strong winds, high temperatures. You can't really stop a fire anymore. The reality is, if you look at the analysis of fire and the landscape and the climate that we currently have and the climate predictions, the experts are really all quite clear about it. You can't really prevent this with prescribed burning, with cutting bigger patches out. It will not change it. You cannot stop fires with the climate that we have.
When you're not allowed to burn strategically like we used to, burn out our creek lines and roadsides and this sort of thing, now we're not allowed to do that. We get fined, can be quite large fines if you're seen to be doing anything like that. So we're sort of got our hands tied. And then the people in the power to do the so-called reduction of fuel loads, they do not carry it out. There's a classic of this with the park, Flinders Chase Park itself, for the past 30 years that has not had a proper earth break like it used to have. When does it come about that they'll listen to local knowledge and go from there?
You know, we haven't been able to take sensible management for managing native vegetation for the last 30, 40 years. This place was last burned in about 1952, I reckon. So we had huge build-ups around here and everywhere else in between, and it just steamrolled through that. We've just got to do something with the landscape. We just can't have forestry and native vegetation linked one to another. It's exactly the same as the chase. It's gone through and totally wiped the chase. That can't happen either. You're going to have that broken up. I mean, we've just wiped out, you know, goodness knows how many wildlife in this. And that's not conservation, not at all.
Always been against bushfires. They're not a necessary thing when they're out of control. They're okay if they're working for you, but not against you. I've raised my family here, and the main gist of all of this is fairness for the community people, and there's so much wrong I see in all of this through not being done the right way, legislated, whichever way you go, red tape, it's Australia-wide, but we cop it on Kangaroo Island at a regular basis and people get hurt. We need to see change, and everyone promises change, and I'm not supposed to talk about things because we're supposed to move on. But if you can't learn by your mistakes, what is the point of all this anyway?
Now, it's only 13 years ago that all the national park burnt. And here we are again, you know, but this time it burnt properly. And then it burnt everyone. You know, this time round, they let a fire start, and then it was a bad day.
There is a bit of us and them, and not just between farmers, but in general between government, farmers. Different departments have different views. At the end of the day, this park has always been here, and if you look over the last 150 years or so, there's been a lot of land clearing here on Kangaroo Island, more and more, especially after the Second World War. We have inserted ourselves into a landscape that naturally has got native vegetation, so we can't then turn around and say that is the problem. That's always a challenge. You know, who's at fault, what's at fault? Do we simply want to get rid of all the native vegetation to make it clear, make it safe? I don't think that's the answer.
It's just more frustration of the system that you keep making the same mistake and just you don't learn from it. I mean, there's a lot of people around that are quite angry. They got not much left and got out just alive.
Yeah, and I'm pretty angry really that this is the sort of loss we suffered. It didn't have to happen with good management from a lot of people. This didn't have to happen. We didn't have to bury 2,500 sheep. We didn't have to go now and rebuild all our sheds, houses, fences. We lost all the fences. There's always a fire risk. Always has been, always will be. But it doesn't have to be as bad as this.
What I'm most angry about, National Sparks and Wildfire Service, they don't do anything, right? They sit there, they get paid all year. They do not do their burn-offs, right? They've done one hell of a burn-off now.
Parks need to be burnt. I mean, you drive around now and you look and everything's regrowing. That's what it does. It burns and everything's reshooting because that's what this scrub, that's how it lives. But it needs to be burnt at a time when it's not going to be a monster that just keeps rolling across people's places. Frustration
is there quite a bit amongst some people, and other people just get on with it. They know this is so complex, you can't blame anyone. These things just happen and there's no easy solution.
Tell the real story, mate. Tell them the truth. Tell them the fire's going to be put out. Where I got evacuated to, a beautiful couple give us a house way on the other side of the island, and I won't mention his name unless he wants to come forward, and I'm pretty sure he'll say something. Him and one of his mates, one of the graziers, had lost everything, and they had the opportunity, and this is from the goat's mouth, both of them had the opportunity, they had a dozer and a grader there to put it out.
Just heartbreaking to know that it could have been prevented. And
could have been put out on the first day. That simple. I don't know, I think they were afraid to make a decision for a start. Whether it was to act or whether it's not to act. They didn't want to do anything. It got out of hand and then it was too late.
The fire could have been put out. Two people out, right out west.
My bulldozer and a grader.
And would save 2 lives and over half of Kangaroo Island.
A good mate of ours, like Skitty, he had his bulldozer sitting there and he's watching it. He watched the lightning strike. He was sitting there and he could have moved in and stopped it. The parks wouldn't let him go in there because you can't damage the park's, vegetation. So he was sitting there for 8 hours. And then they said, oh, you can go in now.
And by then it was already too late.
When he first saw it, it would have been the size of 2 utes.
You had to wait for
You had to wait 8 hours.
because it was in the park. If it was on his own land, he could have just gone in done the scrub. But
He could have driven in
been there
there
in 15
and
minutes.
pushed up around it, pushed a brake around it. It would have all been done.
So no one put in any dozer lines at all?
there was no dozer lines put in until he had permission, because otherwise he'd get sued by the parks. So we got to the fire at about 11 o'clock when he said, can you get out and have a look at our farm? And no, so we've driven out there, and there was our 2 units and one other unit there. And then
Private units?
Private units. And then a thing went out over Facebook, and there was about 30 farm units there before a CFS truck got there.
But by that stage, what had happened?
Oh, it was out of control. There was nothing to do about it.
It was sighted earlier by people out at my property that my son and I've got out in the West End, only kilometres away from where the impact was. And my daughter phoned me, she was out there. She phoned about 3:15, 3:20 on the morning of the 30th and just said, Dad, there's a fire in the park close by.
We were crewed at the school, and when the pages first went off at 4:30 in the morning, we were told, no, hang on, just don't rush out yet because the lightning storm is still coming through.
I flew out to the site, coming into the scene where the ignition point was.
You've got the western end of the island through there. You've got your border road that comes back up through here, and you've got West End Highway through here. You've got Shackle Road. We had a lightning strike in here.
So that was the initial impact there.
And then we had the second strike, which was actually the ravine strike out there.
Now one machine was right there in the area. Mine was on the low loader here at the farm. That's only 30 minutes away.
Some people said, oh, that you weren't responded straight away. It's not that we weren't responded straight away, it's because we were waiting for the band to come through to ensure that there wasn't other priorities that were going to be greater than going to a fire that we couldn't access anyway.
Had we been able to go in there, do a ring around this area, which is was done quickly with 2 machines, and then you do a pass back out again so trucks can actually drive in to do the containment afterwards. But what had happened then, we were left stranded with the idea we weren't allowed in there.
So once we had the edge put up through here to stop the fire on the back, we've come in through behind with a loader from there and a dozer from this side, and to try and meet up.
This fire here took up a lot of appliances, bulldozers, graders, all trying to contain what was started off as a small little fire. And the main thing with all of this was we spent several days trying to contain this one that I believe we could have put out in a matter of hours. And the other fire was building the whole time. Had that not been there, then these resources can be used for the main one.
I actually thought that the fire on the eastern side of Shackle Road was the fire that was of the greatest priorities. We could attack that one. The fire on the western side was 17 kilometres in. You know, if we had have gone in there with the dozers to there, I don't think that we would have made it before it would have gone through anyway.
I could have 95% guaranteed putting that small fire out had we been allowed in there with bulldozers.
Look, we did the best that we could on the day.
Oh, hi. My name's Stephen. Look, I'm just doing some research into specifically the fires on Kangaroo Island. Just to get a top-level perspective of, I guess, the entire effort, what we heard was, if I'm totally honest, and that's why I want to speak to you guys, because I want to get the truth of the matter, we heard a lot of anger, really around the fact that they were told that they couldn't put out the fire when the lightning first struck. So we're really just looking to corroborate that.
Yeah, okay, so what you're talking about is this story around potentially being able to get in with bulldozers?
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Okay. So from what I can understand, you know, from a basic perspective, you can't just have members of the public going in with bulldozers. Yeah. So you know, we're obviously aware of the allegations made, but I think we've got some. The concern I have is that we're not really interested in sort of in addressing each individual issue that has been brought forward. We prefer people to go through the official channels with the review that we have taken place. Yeah. Okay, cool. Can I just have your email address as well, Stephen? All right, leave it with me. I'll come back to you.
The Premier has ordered an immediate review into South Australia's deadly bushfires.
We will immediately push ahead with an inquiry and a review into the bushfire preparedness.
Trust that the review will be managed quite tightly, but it's a great vehicle by which to capture a whole lot of disparate views and opinions.
Could have, maybe, should have, maybe. But people always say that in fire situations, and they need to be strong in their evidence if that's correct. If they're correct, and they may well be, we need to know, because after 2007 fires, a lot of this came out and nothing was done. Nothing was done by the government at the time. We need to get to the truth of what really happened.
I think if you're going to have a fire in the middle of summer, it's not a good idea. Not in a 50,000 hectares of scrub. So if a fire's in there and you've got the opportunity to put it out, you probably want to put it out. There was never enough effort put in initially for the fire to be stopped before it got going, before it turned into this, and it was controllable. So, and when it started off, it's a lightning strike, so it's a small fire. Early morning, it rained. So, you know, you start bombing something then and get it wet, it's controllable. There was no need for this to happen.
We have to become more resilient in terms of what sort of buildings are we putting in a landscape, what sort of fences, how do we do prescribed burns, how do we resource that well that you get the best chance, and surely do something about climate change so this doesn't get worse and worse. Clearly the landscape has become drier, so this event may not be the last one. Touch wood.
And here we go with climate change. Why don't we just call it the Earth does what it does in nature? And climate change is jobs for the boys. And people get off the bandwagon.
My own personal thoughts is, will climate change affect me at being 45 years old? And it may slightly. Will it affect my kids? Yes, it will. Will it affect their kids? Most definitely. Did climate change cause this fire? No. This is lightning. This is lightning in inaccessible country. This was just the perfect storm and the perfect opportunity, the right conditions, and it made a run.
If in the event this happened again, I'd be prepared. I've gone past 70, so I'd be prepared to go straight in with a bulldozer and I'll wear the consequences afterwards. I think it's a childish behaviour on all parts to say you're not allowed in there. We hardly make a mark. We make a clean break, yes, but we don't go in there and devastate the country. Turn around now and have a look at what devastation looks like through not doing fire breaks properly. And the farmers and everyone here deserve a lot better than what we get.
We euthanized about another 12 today. Yep.
Bet that never gets easier.
It doesn't. That's a pretty hard day when you've got to go out and shoot something that you thought enough of to look after. I don't think any farmers would find that very easy. However, it's a fact of life. You can't leave them suffering if they're not going to make it. And I've had 3 weeks now to get over it, and a lot of them have, of course. And we put a huge amount of time into them and continue to do so.
The fire come through on the Friday, right? On the Saturday, we were cleaning up dead cows. These poor bastards didn't even have ears on them.
To lose all my animals as well, that was the hardest bit. To have to come back then and try and deal with, you know, the fact that you've lost everything that I've spent the last 10 years breeding up, and buying good animals to breed, so you've got a good bloodline going, to then have nothing left. That's probably the hardest bit. You know, I've got a sheepdog and no sheep. You know, got a house dog and no house. I fear that all that work is going to be really hard to get back, you know, to anything close to where I was. You know? So I've got my family. You know, everyone says that. I mean, that's the most important thing. But it's still hard to, you know, and I know it's hard for them to come back and look at it. And they always ask. The kids are like, "Oh, you're staying out there again, Dad? Are you?" You know? And that's probably the hardest thing for me at the moment.
Seeing a mate's house that have got a couple of small kids that don't have a home anymore. Adults can get over it, so they can get over their loss, but small children with a room full of toys is their world, and that'll be the hardest thing for them. You know, you gotta look after the young people. Adults will bounce back.
Hey, look, mate, I am fucked.
I lost all my work gear and a few animals and shit, but when you see a mate that lost everything and that's got to live in a pen that you drag the sheep out that I used to share, and that's what he's living in.
Bullshit.
Yeah, well,
It's taken me over 20 years to get there.
I just don't understand. Well, fuck. You know, like, I used to turn over fucking employ 14 people. What do I do now?
What's been the hardest thing to see?
The marks on the road where 2 people died. We drove past when the cops were marking that out. And that's just going to be a memorial for those couple of lads. I mean, that's the pinnacle, isn't it? Lives are lost.
What goes through your head late at night? What are you feeling when you just think about the task ahead of you?
more than lucky here. More than lucky. We've got, still got the business, still got the home. Other people. I thought a lot about it last night. Spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I'm not really comfortable.
Survivor's guilt is such an apt word. And it's almost everyone on the island is affected by it. And it goes as far as some people even reluctant to say, that they had a good weekend, or that they enjoyed a movie that they recently saw on the mainland, or that they actually go and support some of the local businesses just immediately after the fire and have a glass of wine at the cellar door.
Our life is, essentially, it's normal here, whereas for so many people it's not normal. They don't have a home to go to. Those people are hurting. They're really hurting. From the pubs to the sporting clubs to accommodation. It's farmers, it's shearers. Shearers, there's 100,000 plus sheep gone. This fire has echoed through every aspect of the community.
I've also spoken to one particular couple. They run a farm, and they lost pretty much everything on the farm, and they kept stressing that since they didn't lose their house, they're so much better off than all the others. And I said, no, don't kid yourself. It doesn't diminish what you went through, because it's huge.
We evacuated here on the Friday. I went to the CFS station. We've been on and off fire trucks, farm units, food runs. So you'd never even contemplate being open. Even if we did have power and we did have the ability to open, not when something like this is going on. You just do what you do. You help. It's all hands on deck. How do we go forward? How do we try and be as helpful and as kind to each other as we can? Because it's tough. Not so much for me, but for the people that have lost everything.
Unfortunately, the truth that it was disallow was the word. I do not allow you to put out that burning fire. So we found a burning fire and we were not allowed to put it out. In hindsight, I would have been happy to be the guy in the plane that lost his job. I would have been happy to be the farmer in the bulldozer that would have lost his job. And we weren't allowed to extinguish a fire that's killed 2 people. So yeah, that's the kind of hurt and anger that's flowing around at the moment.
It worries me that people are talking class actions and all that's going to do is divide a community. The only way we'll get through this is as a community. I'm incredibly proud of what's happened here. These guys that work in the parks and these guys that work on KOPT, they have worked their absolute off on this fire. And, mate, they're part of this community, right? The rocks will be thrown, right? There's going to be a coroner inquest into this fire. So they shouldn't be thrown from here. Once it's all said and done, the government will come back and say, well, this is what happened and this is why it happened. We don't need to put division in this community when the whole community is hurting. We need to get through this, and we need to get through this together.
And if it wasn't for the community, outflowing and help, I guess I'd be very angry and bitter. But even the help of other people doesn't overcome the fact that, we're canned and we didn't really need to be canned.
That's probably the scariest thing. That would be the scariest thing looking forward, would be its ability to create divides within the community and affect friendships and whatnot. That would be the biggest concern.
I think this is a real opportunity and a good test for leaders as well to show what they can do, whether they can be divisive or bring people together. It's easy to start shifting blame, but at the end of the day, you have to get out of this altogether. I think we can be a stronger place after this, and things will bounce back. Things will bounce back.
Kangaroo has one of the tightest communities going. People care. People genuinely care about each other, whether there be, you know, your neighbour next door or Joe Bloggs 50k down the road or the fellow at the other end of the island who you've played footy against your whole life. And, you know, you may not be best mates on field. When something like this happens, all that none of that counts.
I'm incredibly proud to live where we live. The thing that everyone says, like, Kangaroo Island, it's a beautiful place to visit. Mate, it's a better place to live. Everybody cares for everyone, and when something like this happens, you realise, you know, just how lucky we are to be where we are. So, and that's how we're going to get through this.
The community is too strong to let this beat it.
That's what keeps you going. You know you've got support. I don't know how I would have gone trying to do all this by myself. Like, you can't even imagine the amount of work that's been done here by other people it's crazy. I can't tell you how grateful I am. I mean, within 2 days I had people out here helping me with the livestock. A week later the army arrived and tore all my fences down. You know, helped me started rebuilding, installed a toilet for me, you know, cut down trees that were a hazard. Just an amazing amount of work, and they did that in a day and a half. It's months of work for me, what they managed to do in a day and a half. I had a mate here, well, he's still here. He comes, you know, he's given up his, you know, jobs he should be doing himself just to come here to make sure that, you know, that I can get my jobs done.
We're living off the donations, off the food that people have donated. So I don't have to worry about buying food. So that's a godsend. But yeah, it's just living. A lot of these people are proud and they wouldn't accept donations normally. And I'm the same. I work hard. I don't really need donations, but it's not until you have a look at what's gone that, you know, if you've got a toothbrush, someone will take it. It's down to the bare essentials that you can't say no anymore. And you just start rebuilding. So people with no clothes, except for what they wore on that day. So yeah, you can't say no to a donation.
Probably the that's the difficult part, the help. It's amazing. Yeah, it's mind-blowing, really. The army, Blaze Aid, friends have lent us all the gear this year. You know, it just goes on and on. That's the toughest part to deal with, actually. Yeah, I guess I don't like charity much. That's the hardest part. People are well-meaning, and I guess I would have done it for others. I hope people ring and want my check, you know, bank balance account. And, you know, I really can't handle that. And but the community spirit's great. Yeah, we're all in this together, and we'll dig through it and get going.
this island virtually runs on tourism. So it's crucial to have people realise that, yes, we've been burnt out, but it's not going to stop us from moving forward.
But I'm absolutely optimistic. It will bounce back. Everything will bounce back. And it also shows how much support there already is from the mainland, and from consumers, from tourism campaigns.
The ripple effect from this will go for years until, well, at absolute minimum for the tourism industry next summer, when hopefully we're back up as, you know, South Australia's iconic island, Kangaroo Island, and nature's paradise.
The Kangaroo Island that people love is still here.
We've still got half of the island untouched.
Come here, enjoy it.
Like, there's so many beaches and cafes and wineries.
The wild, rustic, you're on the edge of the earth feeling is still here.
Experience the culture, experience the locals.
Come and see us. You know, that's the most important thing you can do.
Kangaroo Island really needs you to come.
A travel ban will be placed on all non-residents, not Australian citizens coming to Australia, and that will be in place from 9 p.m. tomorrow evening.
There's panic and confusion across the state tonight as South Australians prepare to go into total lockdown. From midnight, we're being told to stay at home.
So this used to be the big shed. It's all got ripped down, cleaned up, seeing everything you worked for get pulled down and crushed. Just get, yeah, like your whole life just destroyed. You know, very depressing. Yeah. And then having to clean it up.
Yeah, as a tradie, I've just been flat out working, so yeah, it's normal. That's the normal. It amazed me how quick everybody just fired up, and the farmers had to do their fencing, and it's just kept rolling. The last 12 months it's been pretty crazy, really. It just never ends, so yeah, it helps you forget about it all.
Everything's just so slow. They talk about recovery, but my case manager, he's got about 10 people over here, and I know not one of them's got their loan yet. 14 months on. We're farmers, we're not bloody accountants. You could start another bushfire with the amount of paperwork.
You know, we all pushed ourselves that much that it was... And I look back on it and I think, how hard can the human body be pushed? And you go to the brink, that's for sure.
You know, when you've been burned out, you're right at the bottom of the bottom. So you got to, well, all you want to do is see stuff going ahead to make you feel better so that you can actually work towards it. Everyone's struggling. You're basically fighting all this on your own. You got your mates you just talk it over with, and they're in the same boat. They're busting their ass and getting nowhere. So I don't know what the secret is to it.
I drive around the island and I still go through what we were talking about on the radio. So it is a flashback. It's weird. It gets you. It's got me. But, like I say to the crew, it's the new normal. Of course you're going to get stuff like that. You might have a tear, and yeah. But if you watch the news, it's not the worst thing that it's happened to anybody.
Quite a few times I was wondered whether it was worth going on. But one for all the mates around here that got burned out as well. Like, I think it's just that everyone else has kept everyone together. Because it's been bloody hard yards. So this will all be 500 tonne cool room, this section here. Grading plant. I've got the footings down for the shed, but I just need to finish paying for the shed. There'll be massive solar system on the roof. Be a big workshop at the back, and the trucks will come through and load undercover. So yeah. If all the measurements are right, it should work Mickey Mouse. Yeah, there's always great challenges in. It's great fun. It's part of living the dream, mate.
Hopefully now we had some meeting with the parks people from Adelaide. They asked me to come in to put some opinions forward, which we did. And instead of doing controlled burn-offs in October, November, I said that's way too late. And now the new bloke we've got in there, he's really good, so they're burning this time of the year. And also interested in doing the big chain breaks in there that we want to try and achieve. Let's hope something has sunk in.
I've been out Flinders Chase and it's just that big that you can't cover it up in sections, and your fire management plan you can try, but it's all about the response. And do we learn the lessons? If it happens again, how are we going to deal with it?
I'm hoping for a decent victory soon. Spuds coming out of the ground are good. That's a victory, I guess. That'll help pay some towards some of the stuff. Just got to take little steps and take a bite and chew like hell, I think. Just keep fighting. It's the only thing I can think of doing. Hopefully I'll be back on my feet within 3 or 4 years. Hopefully. If all the stars line up. So, yeah. Fuck them, I know. We'll get there.
A scathing report found the fire service prioritised national park buildings over homes.
It found that there were systemic failings in the way the CFS managed the KI fires last fire season, failings in communication and also bush firefighting procedures. It also found there was a disproportionate focus on trying to save a national park visitor centre instead of focusing on saving homes on the island, many of which were lost. There were nowhere near enough resources on the ground to fight this unpredictable blaze, according to the report, nor was there adequate technology, which meant that CFS crews were actually getting lost while fighting the blaze. CFS has been accused of trying to cover up this report because it was finalised last October and it has just been released now. The CFS said that they wanted to make sure they briefed all of the volunteers involved before speaking publicly about this. It has now been released publicly, and indeed there were 11 recommendations for changes made in the report, all of which have been accepted by the CFS.